I apologize if I slur on my words today. I have a headache, like a massive headache, and I don't know why. I'm also getting the early effects of lockjaw, so this should be fun. Hello everyone, my name is Stonsey Boy, and welcome back to Reading with Stonsey. Today we are reading pages 61 to 83, I think, longest, and someone immediately texted me. So I was like, should I record? Should I not record? Should I record? Should I not record? And who emails me but LinkedIn? What's LinkedIn? Uh, I don't care. They're talking about some job for some book thing. I don't care. Um, yeah, I think this might be one of the longest episodes. Let me quickly check. This is 23 pages. 23. Let's see. That's 16. Okay. That it is. It is the longest. This will be the longest video in the series. In this book series. But this book's freaking long, so hard to say. But it is easy to say is that it's time to begin. In the afternoon on the streets of New York, Edison asked skeptically. Like I said, most people in New York don't ask too many questions, and both father and son can be very charming when they want to be. I'm sure they said something that makes sense to the people around us. And you woke up in the garden? Yes. The door opens to show a female tech analyst, her hips still on the handle, her hands still full of drinks and food stacks. She nearly drops them on the table, thanking Victor. He helps her steady the cardboard drink caddy. There are hot dogs, hamburgers, and fries, Yvonne announces. Wasn't sure what your tastes are, so I had them put some condiments on the side. It takes the girl a moment to realize that she's the one being addressed, and then all she says is thank you. Anything new from Ramirez? Edison asks. He shrugs. Nothing big. They got another girl identified, and a couple of them have given their names and addresses, or partial addresses. One girl's family relocated to Paris. Poor thing. As he portions out food, Victor watches Inara started the tech. There are questions in the expression, but he can't make them out. After a moment, she shakes her head and reaches a packet of ketchup. The senator? Asks Edison. Still in the air. They ask of the detour around the storm front. Well, Victor almost got his wish. Thanks, Yvonne. The analyst taps her ear. Anything interesting? I'll keep you updated. He nods to Inara and leaves the room. A few seconds later, the mirror rattles slightly and the door in the observation room closes. Victor eyes Inara. She squeezes mustard and relish onto his hot dog. It wasn't sure if he should ask the question. She's never felt uncertain about the power dynamic in the room, but not with the victim. But then she's not exactly a typical victim, is she? That's what's left of half the problem. He frowns at his meal, unwilling to let the girl think the scowl is aimed at her. Edison had that covered. He has to know, though. You weren't surprised to hear about Senator Kingsley? Should I have been? So, you all know each other's real names? No. She squeezes ketchup over the patty and fries and pops a fry in her mouth. Then how? Some can't stop talking about their families. Afraid they'll forget. I guess no names, though. Ravenna said her mother was a senator. That was all she knew. We knew. Her real name is Patrice, Addison says. Inara shrugs. What do you call a butterfly halfway between the garden and the outside? Well, what do you call them? I suppose it depends on whether you're not with her mother. This is a senator. How much damage will it cause if she's forced to become Patrice before she's ready to let go of Ravenna? She takes a large bite of hamburger and chooses slowly, closing her eyes. A soft sound and groan escapes, and her face softens with pleasure. Been a while since you had junk food? Addison asks with an unwilling smile. She nods. Lorraine had strict instructions to make healthy food. Lorraine? Edison grabs a notebook and flips through several pages. The paramedics took a woman named Lorraine. She said she was an employee. You mean she knew about the garden? She lives there. Victor stares at her, vaguely aware of the relish dripping off the hot dog into the foil. Inara takes her time with the food and doesn't continue until the last fry is done. I believe I mentioned that some girls tried to suck up. Lorraine was one of those once upon a time. Someone so desperate to please the gardener that she's perfectly willing to help him do whatever he wanted to other people if he would just love her. She may have been broken before he took her. Normally the girls were given another mark, another set of wings, but this time on their faces to show everyone that they love being one of his butterflies. But the gardener came up with another plan for Lorraine and actually let her out of the garden. He sent her to nursing school and in cooking classes on the side. She was so broken by submission to his interests, so absolutely in love with him, that she never tried to run away, never tried to tell anyone about the garden or the dead butterflies or the living ones who still could have some hope. She went to her classes, then she came back to the garden, she studied and practiced, and when on her 21st birthday, he took away all those backless, pretty black dresses and gave her a plain gray uniform that covered her entirely. She became a cook and nurse for the garden. He never touched her again, never spoke to her except out of her duties, and that's when she finally started to hate him. Not enough, I guess, because she still didn't tell. On kinder days, of which there weren't many, I could almost feel sorry for her. She's what, 40 something now? She was one of the first butterflies. She's known the garden twice as long as she's known anything else. At some point, maybe you have to break. Her way kept her out of the glass. At least, however much she came to regret that. Our cook nurse and we loathed her. And so then even the suck-up despised her, because even the suck-ups would have escaped if they would have tried to call the police for the sake of the rest of us. Or at least, that's what they told themselves. If the opportunity had presented itself, though, I don't know. There were stories about a girl who had escaped. Someone escaped? Demands Edison. She smiles crookedly. There were rumors, but no one knew for sure, not in our generation, or in Lionette's. It seemed more apocryphal than anything. Something most of us believed simply because we needed to believe escape was possible, not because we thought it was real. It was hard to believe the escape when you had Lorraine choosing to stay, despite everything. Would you have tried? Asked Victor. To escape? She gives him a thoughtful look. Maybe we were a different breed of girl than 30 years ago. Bliss especially enjoyed tormenting Lorraine, mainly because she couldn't do anything in return. The gardener got pissed if she screwed with our food and medical needs. She was incapable of insulting us because the words would have to have meaning to hurt. We didn't think the Manus guys knew about the butterflies. We were always hidden when they were in the greenhouse, never allowed to be out where we could be seen or heard. The walls came down opaque and soundproof. We couldn't hear them, just as they couldn't hear us. Lorraine was the only one we knew about us, but it was useless trying to ask her to do anything or send a message to anyone. Not only would she not do it, but she'd take it straight to the gardener, and then another girl would end up in glass and resin in the hallway. Sometimes Lorraine looked up those girls on display with such naked envy it is painful to see. Pathetic, of course, and infuriating, because of the fuck's sake, she's jealous of murdered girls, but the gardener loved those girls in glass. She greeted them when she passed. She visited just to look at them. She remembered their names. She called them his. Sometimes I wish Lorraine looked forward in joining them someday. She missed when the gardener loved her the way he did the rest of us. I don't think she realized it would never happen. The girls in the glass were all preserved to peak their beauty, the wings on their backs brilliant and bright against the young, flawless skin. Gardner would never bother preserving a woman in their 40s, or for however old she would when she died. Those beauty faded decades ago. Beautiful things are short-lived. He told me the first time we met. He made sure of that, and when he strove to give his butterflies a strange breed of immortality. Neither Victor nor Edison has a response. No one asks when they're assigned of crimes against children because they're bored. There's always a reason. Victor always made sure there was reasons for those who work for him. Edison stares at his clenched fist on the table, and Victor knows he's getting a little sister that went missing when she was 8 years old and was never found. Cold cases always hit him hard. Anything where families have to wait for answers that never come. Victor thinks of his girls, not because anything's ever happened, but because he knows he'd lose it if anything ever did. But because it's personal, because they're passionate agents and crimes against children are often the first to break and burn out. After 3 decades at the Bureau, and Victor's seen it happen to a lot of agents, good and bad alike. It nearly happened to them after a particularly bad case, after one too many funerals and 2 small caskets for children that they'd been unable to save. His daughters convinced him to stay. They called him their superhero. This girl had never had a superhero. He wonders if she ever even wanted one. She watches them both, her face revealing nothing but her thoughts, and she was uneasy feeling she understands them a lot better than they understand her. When the gardener came to you, did he ever bring his son? He asked, trying to begin some sort of control in the room. Bring his son? No, but ever he came and went mostly as he wanted to. Did he ever with you? Ever said a poet who thrives under his attentions. She answers with a shrug. Avery didn't like me, though. I couldn't give him what he wanted, which was fear. The gardener only ever killed girls for 3 reasons. First, they were too old. The shelf date counted down to 21, and after that, well, beauty is ephemeral and fleeting, and he had to capture it while he could. Second reason was connected to health. If they were too sick or too injured or too pregnant, well, pregnant, I guess. Being too pregnant was being like too dead. Not a really flexible state. He was always a little too disgruntled about their pregnancies. Lorraine gave us shots 4 times a year supposed to prevent that sort of inconvenience, but no birth control is completely foolproof. Third reason, if the girl was completely incapable of settling into the garden. If, after the first weeks she wouldn't stop crying if she tried to starve herself or kill herself past a certain allowable number of times. The girl who fought too hard, the girls who broke. Avery killed girls for fun, and sometimes by accident. Whenever that happened, his father would ban him from the garden for a time, but then he'd be back. I'd been there almost 2 months before he came looking for me. Lionette was with a new girl who hadn't been named yet, and Bliss was putting up a gardener who I was on a little cliff above the waterfall with Poe, trying to memorize fairyland. Most of the other girls wouldn't go up the cliff without wanting to throw themselves off, so I usually had to do it myself. It was peaceful up there, quiet, but then the garden was always quiet. Even when some of the better adjusted girls would play tag or hide and seek, they were never loud. Everything is subdued, and none of us knew if that was how the gardener preferred it or if it was just instinct. As a group, all of the behaviors were learned from other butterflies, who had just learned it from other butterflies because the gardener had been taking girls for over 30 fucking years. He didn't kidnap under the age of 16, erring on the side of older if he wasn't sure, so the maximum lifespan of a butterfly was 5 years, not counting the overlaps, but that was still more than 6 generations of butterflies. When I met Javer in the restaurant, he was in a tuxedo like his father, sitting in the back against a rock, a book across my knees. As I basked in the warmth of sunlight through the glass roof, I looked up as the shadow fell over me and found him in jeans and open button-down dress shirt. There were scratches on his chest that looked like a bite mark on his neck. My father wants to keep you all to himself, he said. He hasn't talked about you at all, not even your name. He doesn't want me to remember you. I turned to the page and looked back of the book. His hand grabbed my hair and pulled my face up, and the other hand cracked painfully across my face. There's no busboy here to save you this time. This time you'll get what you're asking for. I kept hold of the book and didn't say anything. He hit me again, and blood splashed on my tongue and a split lip, colors dancing in front of my eyes. He yanked the book from my hand and threw it into the stream. I watched it disappear over the edge of the waterfall, so I couldn't have a look at him. You're coming with me. He led me by the hair, which Bliss had to put up into an elegant French twist as soon as it unraveled in his grip. Whenever I didn't move quickly enough for him, he turned and cracked me again. Another girls looked away. We passed him. Every one even started crying, though the girls nearest quickly shushed her in case Avery decided a weeper would be more entertaining. He hurled me into a room I hadn't been in before, near one of the tattoo rooms at the very front of the garden. This was the room that was closed and locked, useless, unless he was playing. There was a girl in there already, her wrist brown and bound to the wall with heavy rings. Blood trickly coated her thighs and parts of her face, trailed down to a nasty bite on one breast, and he held her head lolled forward at an awkward angle. He didn't look up even though I landed on the floor with a loud smack. She wasn't breathing. Avery stroked the girl's flaming hair, curling his fingers into pull her head back. Handprints wrapped around her throat and bone protruded against the skin on one side. He wasn't as strong as you are. She dove at me. Clearly expected me to fight, but I didn't. I didn't do anything. No, not entirely true. I recited a poem. When I ran out of lines, I knew I thought of them again and again and again and again until he threw me against the wall with a disgruntled snarl and stalked from the room with a jean undone. I guess you could say I won. At the moment, I didn't feel like much of victory. When the room finally stopped spinning, I stood up and looked for a key to latch. Whatever would let the poor girl out of the side cuffs. Nothing. I found locked to the cabinet that, when I pulled the door as far as the lock would allow, showed whips, flails, and found bars and clamps and things my mind shuddered away from. I found any number of things. In fact, I accepted a way to give her any shade of dignity. So I found the remnants of my dress and found a way to drape it around her until the most important bits were covered. And I kissed her cheek and apologized for everything, as I apologized to anyone before. You can't hurt you again, Gazelle, I whispered against her bloody skin. And I walked naked into the hallway. Everything hurt, and each girl I passed hissed it with sympathy. None of them offered help, which were supposed to go to Lorraine for that, so she could catalog every injury and report it to the gardener, but I didn't feel like looking for her stony face or feeling her press harder than she need against forming bruises. Retrieving the ruins of poetry book from where I fetched it in the pond, I returned to my room and sat in the narrow shower hall. The water didn't come on until the evening. We had each had an assigned time, unless we'd been just been with the gardener. The girls who'd been there longer would turn their water on themselves, another earned privilege. But that wasn't me yet, not for another few months. I wanted to cry badly to cry. I've seen most other girls do it time and time again, and some of them always seem to feel better afterwards. I hadn't cried since that fucking carousel when I was 6 years old, when I sat trapped on a beautifully painted horse and went around and around as both my parents walked away and forgot all about me. And, as it turned out, sitting on the shower stall waiting for water that wouldn't come for hours wasn't going to flip that switch back on. Bliss found me, water trickling down her skin from her own shower, her hair wrapped in a brilliant blue towel. The color of the wings inked her back. Maya, what? She stopped short, staring at me. Fucking hell, what happened? It even hurt to talk, my lips swollen, my jaw aching from the many slaps among other things. Avery, wait here, because there were so many places I'd likely to go. But when she came back, it was with the gardener, who was unwontedly disheveled. He didn't say a word, just led him into the room, dropped his hand, and walked away. His hand was shaking. He stepped slowly across the room, the horror in his face growing as he catalogued each visible injury, each bite mark and scratch, each deepening bruise or handprint, because the sickest thing was, and there were so many to choose from, he genuinely did care about us. Or at least that's what he thought of us as us. He knelt down in front of me and inspected me with concerned eyes and gentle fingers. May, I'm truly sorry. I truly am. Gazelle is dead, I whispered. I couldn't get her down. He closed his eyes and looked at genuine pain. She can't wait. Let's get you taken care of. Until then, I hadn't realized he actually kept a suite in the garden. As we passed through the tattoo room, he bellowed out Lorraine's name. I could hear her scrambling from the infirmary into the next room. Her gray and brown hair ruffling in the face had escaped her updo. Get me bandages, empty septic, and something to help with the swelling. What happened? Just get it, he snapped. He glared at her and she disappeared, returning moments later with a small mesh bag bulging with haphazardly packed supplies. He punched a code into the pad of the wall, and the section slid back on a getaway, revealing a room done in burgundy, in deep gold and mahogany. There was a comfortable-looking couch, a recliner positioned in the wall, tall reading lamp, a television mounted on the wall, and that was all I got a chance to see before he led me through another doorway into the bathroom, with a floor-set whirlpool tub bigger than my bed. He let me sit down on the edge and started running the water and wet cloth wipe away the worst of the blood. I won't let him do this to you again, he whispered. My son lacks control, among other things, and just as I let him do other things, I let him fuss over me and take care of me and tuck me into bed while he went to get a tray from Lorraine. I wouldn't have thought I could sleep, but I did. All night I was his breath against the back of my neck as he stroked my hair and sides. The next afternoon, I was relaxed in my own bed, and Bliss was keeping me company. Lorraine threw a package at me, while Bliss muttered something about foul-tempered bitches who need to stick their heads in an oven. I unwrapped the plain brown paper and started to laugh. It was the Book of Poe. So the gardener didn't approve of what his son did? The gardener cherished us and genuinely regretted killing us. Avery was just... She shakes her head, folding her legs beneath her in a chair. She winces in the hand against her stomach. I'm sorry, but I really need to use the restroom. The tech analyst opens the door a minute later. Inaris gets up and joins her there. Then glances back at the Victor as if asking for permission. At his nod, they leave and close the door behind them. Victor shuffles through the photos of the hallway, trying to count the individual set of wings. Do you think this is all the girls he took? Edison asks. No, Victor sighs. I wish I could say yes, but if the girl was injured in such a way that damaged her wings on the back, I doubt he displayed them then, because these are all in perfect condition. They're dead, but perfectly preserved. He lifts one of the close-ups. She said glass and resin. Has the scene text confirmed that? I'll find out. He shoves back at the table and pulls his cell phone in the pocket. As long as they've been partners, Victor's never seen him able to stand still while he's on the phone. And as soon as the number's dialed, he starts pacing back and forth across the narrow room like a caged tiger. Finding the pen attached to Edison's notebook, Victor scrawls his initials across the bag and a collection of IDs and slits to open, letting a plastic card spill over the table. It gets a cautious look from Edison as he largely ignores as he shifts through them until he finds the name he's looking for. Cassidy Lawrence. Lionette. Her driver's license was only 3 days old when she was taken, and the pretty girl in the picture seems to be excitement. It's a face meant for smiles, for joy, and she tries to age that into a fierce-eyed girl who welcomed Renara into the garden. He wasn't quite manage it, even when he places the ID against the picture of those pumpkin wings caught in the glass. He can't make himself accept the connection. Which one of you do you suppose is Gazelle? Edison asked, shoving his phone back in his pocket. Too many redheads to guess. Unless Inara can tell us which butterfly she had. How can he have been doing this for 30 years without us ever noticing? If the police had gotten that call and noticed the flags of some of those names, how much longer do you think he would have done unnoticed? That's a fucking terrible question. What did the text say? They're closing up the scene for today, giving a tour of the guards for tonight. They said they'd try to go and open a case tomorrow. Closing up? He twists his wrist, check his watch. Almost 10 o'clock. Christ. Vic, we can't release her. She could disappear again. I'm not convinced she's part of this. I know that. Then why aren't you pushing harder? Because she is more smart enough to turn it back on us, and he laughed sharply. More than enough of a smartass to enjoy doing it. Let her tell in her own way. All it costs us is time, and this is one of the few cases where we have the time. He leans forward, clasping his hands against the table. The suspects are not in good condition. They may or may not survive the night. She's our best chance of learning the larger picture of the garden. If she's telling the truth, she hasn't actually lied to us. What we know of, people with fake IDs don't usually innocent, Vic. He may be actually telling the truth about why she has it. It's still illegal, and I still don't trust her. Give her time. That will also give us time for the other girls to recover enough to talk to us. The longer we keep her here, the better our chances of getting the other girls talking. Edison scowls but nods. She's irritating. Some people stay broken. Some pick up pieces and put them back together with all sharp edges showing. Rolling his eyes, Edison scoops his IDs back into the evidence bag. He stacks each photo neatly into a pile and lines the edges with the corner of the table. We've been up more than 36 hours. We need to sleep. Yes. So what do we do about her? We can't let her disappear. If we take her back to the hospital and the senator hears about her, she'll stay here. We'll get some blankets, see if we can find a cot, and in the morning she'll resume. You really think that's a good idea? A better idea than letting her go? If we keep her here rather than moving a holding cell, it's still an active interrogation session. Even Senator Kingsley isn't going to butt in during an active interrogation. Are we holding our breath on that? He gathers the trash from dinner, stuffing everything in one bag until the paper splits and bursts into a strain and heads to the door. I'll hunt down a cot. He yanks open the door and scowls at returning Irina and Yvonne and stalks away. Yvonne nods and Victor returns to the observation room. What a pleasant man, Inara notes dryly, and slides into her seat on the far side of the table. The suit stakes and dirt are gone from her face, her hair neat into a heavy twisted bun. He has his uses. Please tell me talking to damaged children isn't one of them. He's better with suspects, he allows, and wins a hint of smile. He looks for something to occupy his hands, but Edison's compulsiveness straighten everything on the table. Tell us about being in the garden. Meaning? Day to day, when nothing out of the ordinary is happening. What is it like? Boring as all she answers selectively. Victor pinches a bridge of his nose. No, but seriously, it was boring. There were usually 20 to 25 of us in the garden at any given point, not counting Lorraine, because really, why would she have counted for anything? Unless he was out of town, the gardener visited at least one of us a day, sometimes two or three if he didn't have to work or spend time with a family or friends, which meant he would still have time with all of us within a single week. After what Avery did to me and Gazelle, he was only allowed in the garden once a week, and only under his father's supervision. Though he defied that as often as he thought he could get away with it. It didn't last long anyway. Breakfast was served in the kitchen at 7:30, and we had until 8 o'clock to eat, so Lorraine could get everything cleaned up. You couldn't get any away with skipping meals. She watched us eat and reported it to the gardener. But one meal in a day, you were allowed to be not as hungry if you did it twice. She'd show up in your room to do a checkup. After breakfast, well, except for those 2 mornings of maintenance, then we were all stuck behind the walls. We were free until 12 when lunch was served with another half-hour window. Half the girls went back to bed. They thought sleeping through the day would make them go faster. I usually found Lionette's example, which even after was in the glass and made by mornings available for any girls who needed to talk. The cave under the waterfall became an office of sorts. There were cameras everywhere and mics, but the crash of even such a small waterfall made it too difficult for conversation to come across clearly. And he allowed this? Victor asked incredulously. Once I explained it to him, sure. Explained it to him? Yes, he sat me down to dinner one evening and was sweet to ask about it. I suppose to make sure we weren't fomenting rebellion or something. And how'd you explain it? The girls needed some semblance of privacy for mental well-being, and as long as those conversations kept the butterflies healthy and whole, why the f*** did it matter? Well, I expressed it a little more eloquently than that. The gardener liked elegance. Those conversations with the girls, what were they like? With some of them, it was just venting. They were restless and scared and pissed off and needed someone to talk to and feeling from them. They paced in rage and pounded the walls, but at the end, if their hands and hearts were sore, they were at least a little farther from breaking. These were the girls like Bliss. They only lacked their courage. Bliss said whenever she wanted, wherever she wanted. She said for the first time I met her, the gardener who never asked us to love him. He wanted us to, I think, but never asked us to. I think he valued her honesty, just as he came to value my straightforwardness. Some of the girls needed comfort, something I was not especially good at. I could have patience with the occasional tears or the tears that came from the first month in the garden, but when it went on and on and on for weeks and months and even years, well, that generally when I lost patience and told him to get over it. Or, if I'm feeling magnanimous that day, I sent him on to Evita. Evita was an American lady. Her black inked and faded oranges and dull yellows were the wings spread of the intricate black platters. Evita was sweet, but not quite bright. I don't say that to be mean, but because it's true. She was the understanding of a 6-year-old, so the garden was a daily source of wonder for her. The gardener only came to her once or twice a month because she always got so confused and scared of what she wanted from her. And Avery wasn't allowed to go near her at all. Every time the gardener came, we all worried that she'd end up in glass, but the simple sweetness was something he seemed to treasure. The simple sweetness meant you could go to her, bawling your eyes out, and she'd hug and stroke and make silly sounds until you stopped crying. And she'd listen to you pour your heart out, without saying a word. For those girls, being around Evita's sunny smile always made them feel better. For my part, being around Evita just made me sad. But when the gardener came to her, she came to me, and she was the one person whose tears I could always forgive. Do you need a special needs to advocate up to the hospital? The girl shakes her head. She died about 6 months ago. An accident. Around 11:15, the office closed and the group of us ran laps around the hallways. Lorian just glared at us if she wasn't present but never said anything against it. Because it was really the only exercise we got. The gardener wouldn't give us weights or treadmills or anything because he worried we'd use them to injure ourselves. Then, after lunch, the afternoon was ours until dinner at 8 o'clock. That was when boredom set in. The cliff top became my place even more than the waterfall cave because I was one of the few who enjoyed climbing it and sprawling those glass that marked the edge of our prison. Most of the girls did better pretending the sky wasn't so close. Pretending that our world was bigger than it was, and that nothing waited outside. If it helped them, I wasn't gonna argue with them, but I loved it up there. Some days I even climbed the trees and stretched out to press my hand against the glass. I liked reminding myself that there was a world beyond my cage, even when I'd never see it again. Early on, sometimes Lionette, Bliss, and I would sprawl in the afternoon sun or talk, or read. Lionette would fold her origami creations, Bliss would play her polymer clay, and the gardener brought for her, and I'd read aloud from plays or novels and poetry. But sometimes we'd just go down to the main level where the stream bisected in the almost jungle-like growth. We'd spend time with the other girls. Sometimes we'd just read together, or talk of less sensitive things, but there were games too, when we got bored enough. Those were the days that seemed like make the gardener happiest. We knew we were cameras everywhere because the night you could see their winking red eyes. But on days when we played, we'd come into the garden and watch us at the rocks of the waterfall. The soft smile on his face, like this was everything he could have dreamed of. I think the tribute was how bored we got when didn't all scattered to our rooms and solitary activities the minute we saw him. 6 months ago, about 10 of us were playing hide and seek, and Danielle was it. She had to count off to 100 while standing near the gardener, because it was the one place none of us were likely to hide, and so the only place he wouldn't easily hear us hiding. I'm not sure if he was aware of the logic or not, but he seemed charmed to be part of the game, even peripherally. Peripherally. I nearly always climbed the tree during these games, mainly because practicing for 2 years on a fire escape in the apartment meant I could climb higher and faster than anyone else. They might find me pretty easily, but that couldn't actually reach me to tag. Evita was scared of heights, just as she was scared of enclosed spaces, and someone always stayed with her at night because the walls came down and she wouldn't be alone or terrified. Evita never climbed, except that day. I don't know why she wanted to, especially not when we could see how scared she was when she got 6 feet off the ground, but even when we called across that it was okay, she wouldn't still hide somewhere else. She was determined. I can be brave, she said. I can be brave like Maya. From beside Danielle, the gardener watched us with worried eyes, like he did whenever one of us went against our habits. Danielle reached 99 when just stopped, giving Evita more time to hide. We all did that sometimes, but if we could hear her, Danielle kept her back and rubbed her hands over her tattooed face, waiting for silence. It took Evita almost 10 minutes, but she pulled herself up to the tree inch by inch until it was 15 feet up, sitting at one of the branches. Tears tracked down her face, but she looked at me in a nearby tree and gave me a weary smile. I can be brave, she said. You're very brave, Evita, I told her, braver than all the rest of us. She nodded and looked down between her feet and the ground. It seemed so far away. I don't like it up here. Do you want me to help you down? She nodded again. I stood carefully on my branch and turned so I could start down the tree, only to hear Evita cry out behind me. Evita, no! Wait for Maya! I looked back up over my shoulder in time to see Evita windmilling wildly and teetering down the branch until it was too narrow to support her weight. The branch snapped and Evita shrieked as she dropped. Everyone rushed her to hiding places and tried to help, and then her head struck the lower branch a sickening crack and her screams abruptly stopped. She fell into a pond with a great splash and was still. I shimmed down the tree as quickly as I could, scraping my legs and arms on my bark, but no one else moved, not even the gardener. They all stared at the girl in the pond as the blood floating away with her pale blonde hair. Wadding into a scream, I grabbed her ankle and pulled her closer to me. Finally, the gardener came running, the heedless of the fine clothing he helped me get her out of the water into dry land. Evita's lovely blue eyes were frozen open, but there wasn't any sense of trying to make her breathe. Part of that crack had been her neck breaking. Death was a strange thing in the garden, an omnipresent threat, but not something that we actually saw. Girls were simply taken away, and a pair of wings or display case of the halls took their place. For most of these girls, this was their first time seeing death firsthand. The gardener's hands shook as he smoothed Evita's wet hair back from her face and cradled the wet mess in the back of her skull where she hit the branch. Then they were all staring at her when Evita because she was weeping. His entire body moved with the strength of sobs, his eyes screwing shut against the unsuspected pain. He rocked back and forth with Evita's body clasped to her chest, blood straining his sleeve and the water soaking through his shirt and trousers. It was like she he'd taken over our tears from us. Then, alerted by his screams, the other girls had come running into their rooms elsewhere in the garden. Together, all 22 of us stood in dry-eyed silence as our captor swept for the death of the one girl he hadn't killed. She takes the stack of away photos and flicks them through until he finds one she wants. He arranged her hair so the damage wouldn't show, he tells Victor, laying it from the sea. He spent the rest of that day and night doing something, off where we couldn't see him. When the walls came down the next day, he was up in glass and he was asleep in front of her, his eyes red and swollen. He stayed there and the rest of the day, right in front of her, right up until a couple of days ago. He touched the glass every time he passed it, until didn't even seem to realize he was doing it. Even when the glass was covered, he touched the wall. He wasn't the only accidental death, though, was she? She shakes her head. No, not by a long shot, but Evita was, well, she was sweet, utterly innocent, incapable of comprehending the bad things. When they happened to her, they touched her lightly, and when they let her go in a way, I think she was the happiest of us, purely because she didn't know any other way to be. Edison bursts in a groan of cheap metal, dragging a cot behind him and the other arm full of blankets and thin pillows. He drops in the far corner and, panting, turns to the partner. Just got a call from Rios. The son is dead. Which one? The words are said so softly, a full pair of them indefinable emotion. Victor wasn't entirely sure if he even heard it. He looks at the girl, but her eyes are just fixed on Edison, one fingernail digging into the gauze until the scarlet blooms along her finger. Edison is quickly taken aback. He glances at Victor and shrugs. Avery, Edison answers, nonplussed. He holds in on herself, hiding her face in her arms. When Victor wonders if she's crying, but if she lifts her head a minute or later, she's dry-eyed. Haunted in some new, inexplicable way, but dry-eyed. Edison gives Victor a significant look, but Victor can't begin to guess what's running through the girl's head. Shouldn't she be happy her tormentor is dead, or at least relieved? And maybe that is there, buried in her complexity. But she seems more resigned than anything else. Inara? Her pale brown eyes flick over the cot, her fingers digging under the gauze in both hands now. Does this mean I can sleep? She asks dully. Victor stands in motion for Edison to give him the room. He does so without comment, taking the pictures and evidence bags, and in less than a minute Victor is alone, a broken child he may never understand. Without speaking, he unfolds the squeezing legs of the cot and stands it in the farthest corner of the door, where the table could be between the girl and anyone else entering. Wraps one of the blankets around it like a sheet. The other drapes to the foot, and the pillow is piled near the head. When he's done, he takes a knee over the chair and gently lays a hand against her back. Inara, I know you're tired, so we'll let you sleep now. We'll be back in the morning with breakfast and more questions, and hopefully an update for you and the other girls. But before I go, does it have to be tonight? Did the younger son already know about the garden? He bites her lip and blood dribbles down her chin. With a deep sigh, he hands her a tissue in a pocket and walks to the door. Des. He looks back at her, still with one hand on the door, but her eyes are closed and her face is written over in pain he can't begin to name. I'm sorry. His name is Desmond, and yes, he knew about the garden, about us. Her voice breaks, and even though she knows a good agent should take advantage of this crack, this vulnerability, sees his daughter sitting there with that pain and he can't do it. There'll be someone watching from the tech room, he says softly. If he needs anything, they'll help you. Sleep well. That fractured sound may be a laugh, but it's not one he wants to hear again. He pulls the door closed with a quiet click behind him.
Wow. That was just genuinely wow. That was an ending. I mean, just I can't say if I like that ending. Oh, by the way, Avery's dead. Like, that's a weird character to just die all of a sudden. Very, very, very strange, but whatever. What I know it isn't strange is that today we read pages 61 to 83 of The Butterfly Garden. This is the end of part 1, which means next episode will be reading part number 2, pages 84 to 10. 84 to 10? Stonsey, what you talking about? You off your rocker again? Well, no, faithful viewer, I'm not. Because we're actually looking at whoop, 84 to 100. Very simple, very easy. And then we're going to have to move it next episode. But next episode's going to be pretty quick. It's only 16 pages, so it's not going to be bad. What I know is never bad, at least for my voice. Though sometimes I do have this weird little feeling like, oh, I don't want to do this. And then I wake up in the moment. I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, I do. I love doing this. I guess it's like one of those things of if you do something you love every day, you get bored of it. Or eat your favorite food every day, you get bored of it. Whatever. But it's time for... Learning Corner of the day. Doing it up Stonsey's way. Bop. Still really am thinking about changing that. Today we are going to be learning about the Giant Schnauzer. It's really sad is I had a picture in mind when I read this in today's episode. But what made me really sad was that I actually couldn't get the proper picture for it because it's a wed p. I don't know what the heck that is. That must be a new image format. Because every time I try to use one for thumbnails, I always got flagged, and they're like, "You can't use this image. This is governmentally controlled or protected." And I'm like, "Okay, so I can't use these types of images." So I never did. I stick to JPEGs. And yeah. So these are not really good for size comparison, but basically they're the size of a bridge railing. That's the picture. I saw it from Reddit years ago. That's the picture. Just look up Giant Schnauzer, when you get the time, because these guys are gigantic. But before I can make fun of or have an opinion on anything, especially if I like it, I should learn of its history. Not only does it make me smarter in front of my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, or my basset hound who keeps grunting at me because he's trying to sleep because it's 10:14 at night and he's like, "Dad, please go to bed and stop making audiobooks." I won't, Bubby, because I do this for fun. But it's also good because it makes you more intelligent. Now, intelligence doesn't necessarily lie in just knowing things. It also has in knowing things and teaching them to others. And that's why some of the smartest people you ever meet are teachers or doctors, though then again, there are some good teachers and good doctors, and then again, there's some real bad teachers and real bad doctors. Not everyone's fit for certain things and others, and you maybe wonder, how the heck did they get through educational school? Because I think that's really a bad thing, is people can be really smart but not sociable, so they're not really good at teaching, are they? Makes you wonder. So, the history of the Giant Schnauzer is that the Giant Schnauzer originated in the country beside the Bavaria and Württemberg. Cattlemen were impressed by the smaller standard Schnauzer and sought to emulate it on a larger scale. It would be suitable for driving cattle. It is likely, though not documented, that they crossed the standard Schnauzer with their larger, smooth-coated cattle driving dogs in an attempt to create a wire-haired drover. Later, crosses with the rough-coated sheepdogs and the Great Dane and Bouvier de Flandres, probably occurred, and even crosses with the black poodle, wolf spitz, and wire-haired pinscher have been suggested. The result of the weather-resistant, smart-looking dog capable of handling cattle, when known as the Munchener, they later became more popular as butchers or stockyard dogs. Even later brewery guard dogs. The dogs maintained a low profile with little exposure before World War I, when it suggested that they would be trained as police dogs. They expelled at their new assignment, but have not been well accepted outside of Germany in that capacity. They have gained more headway as a pet in recent years, however, now enjoy modest popularity in America. Once German, now American, but apparently didn't get any recognition by the AKC or UKC, which is strange. Maybe just not a kept detail and should just be kind of known. Interesting. But what's the temperament? How do I keep this giant in a good standing? Or, how does it do with kids? Is he going to step on them? Probably not. Well, the temperament of the Giant Schnauzer is that the playful, rambunctious Giant Schnauzer may be too boisterous for small children, even though it's otherwise very good with children in its own family. It's bold, protective of its family, and reserved with strangers. It's aggressive towards other dogs. This intelligent and exuberant breed is a good choice for an active person wanting a partner in adventure, although at times, the giant may try to be the leader. How cute. So it'll pull you along. You try to walk him, he's walking you. That type of thing. But what's the upkeep? How do I keep this big boy in check? Well, the upkeep of the Giant Schnauzer is that it needs daily exercise and daily fun. Its exercise requirements can be met with vigorous gains and long hikes or walks. It live outside in temperate cold climates, but it's best when it's allowed to divide its time between house and yard. Harsh coat needs combing once or twice weekly, plus shaping 2 or 4 times yearly. Shaping is best done by professional scissoring and hand stripping, but clipping is acceptable for pets. What isn't acceptable for kids is the next part that I'm going to be reading about. Cover your ears. Teenagers and adults, get your notebooks if you have a Giant Schnauzer, for we're going to be talking about the health concerns. And unlike the dog we read in the last episode, this guy actually does have some concerns. Their major concerns are CHD, minor concerns are OCD, gastric torsion, or hypothyroidism, which is really surprising that the gastric torsion gets them, but then again, big stomach, big virus. So they're occasionally seen with nothing, though, keep an eye. Suggested tests are for the hip and thyroid, and their lifespan is 10 to 12 years. That seems to be a trend. If your dog is big or fat, they seem to have a shorter lifespan than the average. I don't know. It might be with, depending how big your body will deteriorate faster. I don't really know how that works. Now, imagine you'll see this picture in front of you. What's their form and function? What do they do? Well,
This is a larger, more powerful version of the standard Schnauzer. Its body is strong, compact, and nearly square. Combining great power and agility, the stride is free and vigorous. Its good reach and drive. Its double coat consists of soft undercoat and a harsh, wiry, dense outer coat, a combination that enables it to withstand harsh alpine conditions. Its hallmark harsh beard and eyebrows, coupled with a smart outline, make a striking figure. The combination of a rugged build, reliable temperament, and weather-resistant coat make for a powerful and versatile worker. Now, for the tier list for the Giant, and where we actually get to learn its height, 5 is the best, 4 is better, 3 is average, 2 is worse, and 1 is the worst unless it comes to grooming, though I don't think this dog is going to escape that. Energy levels out of 3 is pretty average. Exercise requirements and playfulness are out of 4, so real high on the exercise requirements. Affection level and friendliness towards dogs are out of 1, so this dog isn't very loving. It's pretty good guard, though. Friendliness towards other pets is out of 2. Friendliness towards strangers is out of 1. Ease of training is out of 3, so average. Watchdog ability and protection ability are both out of 5. Grooming requirements, sadly, goal tolerance and heat tolerance are out of 3. So weird thing with the grooming requirements, 1 is the best. You don't want high grooming requirements, or maybe you do. I don't know. 2 is worse. 3 is awful. 4 is goodness awful, and I've never seen a 5, but I bet there's a 5 in here somewhere. The weight of a healthy giant schnauzer for both male and female should be 65 to 90 pounds. Ooh, this is a fat dog, but then again, he's big. Now to learn its height. A male giant schnauzer is 25 to 27 inches. Huh. And a female is 23.5 to 25.5 inches. Yeah, looking at other dogs like the Anatolian Shepherd, these guys aren't really giants. Maybe they're giants compared to schnauzers. That's 17 to 20. That's 26. No, Doberman pinschers are bigger. I'm confused. Whatever. Oh, but you know what? We're gonna get into the big type of dogs in the next episode, because we're gonna be talking about the one we're gonna learn about in the next episode. The next episode is gonna be very short, so that works out. So I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. With the end of part 1, I'm gonna start working on the bookmark, so you guys can see what it looks like. So, super fantastic, wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time. Yep, gotta sit up. And yeah, go to our community page on YouTube. It should be posted there. I mean, it'll be done earlier, but I'll schedule the post to be that day. You know how this works. You're great. You're great. You're awesome. You're fantastic. Have a super fantastic, wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time.